This deck is the Wolfman deck. That's what I've named it, the Wolfman deck. An extreme situation of peeling deck paint. Believe it or not, this did not look like this. It was actually in pretty decent shape. The cleaning process has done this. The coating just didn't have great adhesion, so a lot of it was coming up. It did have some areas of peeling before we started this, but it wasn't extreme like this. It's an extreme situation now, right? Let's talk real quick about the challenges at this deck before Kong Armor deck painters come in and lock down and encapsulate this beautiful, beautiful deck that's got peeling paint with our ultra thick lifetime armor coating system. This will be the last coating system that these people will need, okay? Challenge number one is obviously dealing with this peeling deck paint. When this is all resolved, I'm going to show you guys how we resolute this for our customers. Challenge number two is loose fasteners. Fasteners that have popped up and become loose over the years. There's plenty of them here on this deck. Kong Armor will take care of this too. Challenge number three are going to be bad deck boards. Rotten. Corrosion from fasteners was the problem here. We're going to talk about that at the end. Challenge number four is obviously dirt and grime buildup all over the deck, mildew and algae. Challenge number five is going to be hairline cracks and resurfacing. So all these cracks that are running through the deck boards, we call them hairlines. They exist here. They're numerous, they're everywhere. Not extreme, but they are numerous. We'll talk about how we remedied that as well at the end. Challenge number six, checking in the deck post. Large structural cracks in the outside structural deck post. The 6x6 posts that are holding up this deck, they all have large areas of checking. This is what we call this checking, or cracks in deck post. We'll talk about that at the end. So I'm live here at the Wolfman deck. This is also a deck in Taylor Mill, Kentucky. Just completed one today in Taylor Mill. Here's another one that is now complete in Taylor Mill. And I promised you guys that once we completed this, we would talk about the challenges that we constantly talk about with deck systems, specifically wood deck systems. The number one, I'm not going to go in order, but one of them was the mildew and algae growth, right? Kong Armor, when we come in to do a deck, we very, very specifically spend a great deal of time cleaning, because we know that when deck paint systems fail, typically it's from lack of proper cleaning, okay? So whether we use a chemical or whether we use force or pressure, our main concern is to get mildew, algae, and dirt off of these so that we can properly coat them. You know, just like stone or concrete is a strong foundation for a house, a strong foundation for a deck paint system is proper cleaning. Without it, you will fail, okay? Another one of the challenges that we talked about here was something called checking, all right? Or what the average man calls deck post cracks, right? This deck had some very large structural cracks running the length of the deck post. There's two ways that we deal with these. One, if they're not very big, if they're smaller in nature and we feel that they still have life in them, they're still going to get larger, we'll use an elastomer filler, an elastomeric filler. Fill them in, and that way they can still expand, and that elastomer can elongate up to 300% so it can expand with them. One of these that we use is called Big Stretch, a very from the makers of Sashko is who makes that, and they're a worldwide leader in products for log cabins, specifically fillers, caulking, sealants for log cabins. And we all know how much log cabins move, right? So they're just very good at making caulking and stuff for wood, because they've been doing it so long. That's one of the things that you have to embrace when you start doing this repetitively. You have to embrace the best products, the people that know what they're doing, that have had products in place for extended periods of time. You need to embrace those products. What's great about Big Stretch is that instead of being chock full of polymer, acrylic polymer, it's actually more filler than it is polymer. And the filler that they use is it expands a lot, and it has great adhesion. So that's kind of what's great about it. It's able to expand and have very good adhesion. On large cracks, like there were some large cracks here on these posts, we're going to come in and use epoxy. If they're at the end of their life, we're going to fill it in with epoxy, let that cure up and paint over it. And then we get a flat, smooth finish that's as hard as concrete. That post ends up becoming stronger than it was before with that epoxy in there. So we covered mildew and algae, we covered the deck cracks. Let's talk a little bit about loose fasteners. So this system, it had loose screws, loose nails, things like that. Look how beautiful it's turned out. It's stunningly beautiful. We've come in, we've knocked those down, set those down so that you can't see them. I have to take my shoes off to walk on this. So come in, set loose fasteners, loose nails, stuff like that. That is with every deck in the area. Look how beautiful. Stunningly beautiful. Very pretty. The expansion and contraction of wood causes the fasteners to move, basically. And they become loose. And then they start popping up. It's important that you deal with these when that happens, right? Hate to see somebody stub a toe or something like that and get hurt on over a screw that's popping up on a deck, right? We also talked about hairlines, hairline cracks in wood. The problem is water sits down in them longer than it does in other areas of the deck, on the flat surfaces of the deck. So the water gets down in the cracks, and it takes it longer to get out of there than it does just on the surface. The problem this causes is it gets to the fastener systems, the nails and the screws, and sits down there on them for an extended period of time. This causes corrosion. Well, with the Kong armor system, we virtually eliminate all of these cracks. 95 to 99% of them are gone once we install our system. This creates one of our features called water lock, right? So specifically, our elastic system is ideal for areas where water is plentiful, especially around pools and pool decks and docks and just areas that take a lot of abuse from water. The film thickness here, thick, high build elastomer. One of its advantages is that it's able to take on wind-driven rain. wind-driven snow, ice. Toughness of the film is specifically designed to take on that stuff. So we cover in those cracks with this thick film that's able to lock out water, and then the water has a very, very challenging time degrading it, causing damage to it. It's just way tougher than the other coatings that are available, right? You think what else we talked about here? Hairlines, the deck post cracks. We talked about loose fasteners. We'll talk a second about expansion and contraction and how our system helps with that. So all these things that we talked about, these problems, they are from basically the expansion and contraction of this wood. What causes it to do that? Specifically, relative humidity. Okay, relative humidity is what causes this wood to swell up and then contract. When the humidity, the relative humidity, which is the measure of water in the air, when it goes up, these boards, if they're uncoated and not protected or have a thin residential coating on them, the water in the air is able to penetrate them and cause water particles to start to gather, build up in these boards, and then they swell. When the water content in the air goes down, when the relative humidity goes down, they contract. Well, this is also why thick build, because when you go with thick build, when you go with a Kong armor system, the relative humidity has a harder time affecting this wood. It cannot easily penetrate the film. It's not a super breathable film. It is breathable, but it's not insanely breathable. Okay, so your expansion and contraction of your wood will be less. It will be less. This causes less loose fasteners, less cracks to appear, just less problems overall if you have less cracks and you have less water getting in. So it's a great benefit to protect these wood systems, right? The sun. We talked about the sun and how it causes extreme damage to exterior wood. It causes extreme damage to everything in its path, including human beings. Look at yourself. Look at a picture of you when you were a baby, and now look at you in the mirror. Look at what the sun's done to you. If you're being honest with yourself, it's wore you down. It's wore all of us down. As we age and the longer we're out in the sun, the UV rays, the UVA and UVB rays, they play on our skin. They destroy our skin pigmentation. They make our skin rough and coarse. They do that with the things that are left in its path, no matter what it is. Doesn't make a difference what it is. Doesn't make a difference. But what we know about thick build, the Kong Armor thick build system, and why specifically thick build, what we know about it is, we know that it takes the sun tremendously longer to break it down. Okay? It takes it a lot longer to break down thick build, which is an advantage over thin coatings. Okay? Thin residential coatings that never had a chance. It's an extreme advantage. Okay? This deck here in Taylor Mill is complete, minus maybe a few touch-ups that the customer wants to have done. Outside of that, it's very, very beautiful. Very, very beautiful. This deck turned out extremely beautiful compared to what they had here. It's armored to the teeth.